Spiritual Formation with Pastor Jason. I am your host, Pastor Jason Perry of Living Springs Community Church, and I am so glad that you're choosing to spend a few moments here with us this morning. Today we are continuing our teaching on hope and healing in traumatic times, as we have been looking for the last 6 weeks or so, looking at the idea of how do we find hope and healing in traumatic times. As we all know, 2020 has been a very traumatic year when we look at all of the issues that we've dealt with this year. Everything from really unusual political situations. We've looked at racial tensions. We've had economic downturns across the country. There have been fires and all kind of things like that. And there's also this one little thing called COVID-19, this pandemic that has killed over 320,000 people. So all of those things have formed to create a very traumatic year. And what we have been looking at is how do we survive those traumatic times? Mm-hmm. Well, today, I wanted to invite you to a very special program. As you can tell, this has been pre-recorded and being played now. But as I looked at this, I wanted to talk with some people, some young people who have really had their own levels of trauma in various ways. And I just thought we would have a conversation today about what that trauma has looked like in their lives, what some of that trauma is, and how they have dealt with it. Some of you all know Suzanne Bush. Suzanne is my assistant, my mentee, my buddy. And we have, and so she helps me behind the scenes with a lot of things that I do at Oak Tree. And so she's going to talk about some of her trauma. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a little bit. And then the other person you see on the screen, the big muscular one there is, you didn't really think that I wasn't just going to say something about that.
I was hoping you didn't, but I felt it coming. It's okay.
Well, hoping you know me better than that, Cam. You know me better. So the other is is another really good friend of mine. I love to say that, a good friend of mine. I call him MLC, my leader, Cam, and but he is Cam Cross, and Cam is a young man that what about 4 years now, Cam? I think you started when you were about a junior in high school.
Yeah, about a junior, sophomore in high school, something like that.
Yeah, so Cam is also another mentee of mine that has had his own some different trauma, and I think he might even share some stuff with me today that I don't know. So we're gonna see. So I thought what I wanted to do today was to really just kind of have a conversation about trauma, how we deal with it. Suzanne is probably a little bit more familiar with this topic because she's on the show each week with us. Cam has probably not heard a lot of the things that we've talked about. So I'm kind of bringing him up to speed as we're going. But again, this is just going to be a conversation among friends about what trauma is. And so let me go back again. Suzanne, you want to tell us anything just by way of introduction about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? Those type of things.
Sure. So I am Suzanne Bush. I am Jason's mentee since I was about 16. So we're over a decade now. We are over that big hump. In terms of work and stuff, I work in a therapeutic residential home as an education advocate for young men. So I have some formal training in trauma along with life experience. What else do you need to know, JP, about me?
Good for right now.
Good enough? Okay.
Don't you do something with some place called Oak Tree Leadership or something? You do something with
I'm not familiar. And then I'm the manager of administrative services or support services for JP over at Oak Tree Leadership, and really just work on supporting you in any way you need, whether it's the digital realm or bringing you coffee or whatever you make me do.
Don't be messed with my secrets now. So All righty. All right. Flex.
Exactly why I'm putting you on.
Yeah, want you, yeah. So are you trying to hide or are you cold?
A little bit of both.
Little bit. Okay. So why don't you tell us who you are, where you go to school, anything like that you want to tell us?
Okay. Hello, my name's Cam Kraus. I am a sophomore now at Lincoln College. I've had the pleasure of knowing Pastor Perry since about my sophomore year of high school. Yeah, he's been there, helped do a lot of stuff. We're gonna just say stuff.
So what are you doing right now?
Currently I'm enjoying the break, but we just finished exams and stuff. I'm the president of, well, I don't know if you noticed, but the shirt underneath can't chill.
You dress in the undresses. Look at this dude.
But look, it says Kings. I'm a part of that brotherhood. It's a brotherhood basically about just helping young guys like me in college figure out the road of life. It's just good, company there, because as men, it's like this. There's this weird like stereotype. I don't know where it comes from, but amongst like especially us young Black men, we're supposed to be like really tough and not have like feelings. I guess like we're supposed to just let life roll off our shoulders. And to be completely honest, it's not that easy. It's tough. So it's just and cool to have other guys there that you could just say like, man, life's tough right now. And they're like, yeah, bro, talk about it, like let it out. So it's really good to be a part of, and it helps me get through the tough stuff, especially those rough days in college. So yeah.
Did you mention that you were in college? Did you tell us where you were going to college?
Yeah, I think I did at the beginning, but I'll say it again. I'm at Lincoln College, which is in Lincoln, Illinois, which is in the middle with Grant, Horn.
Okay. Well, good. So let's jump into this whole idea of looking at trauma. And so just so that we're all on the same page, I thought that what I would do is maybe go back and kind of walk through this model that I had put together before about trauma, about what is trauma. And so that way, for whether it's for us, so we have the same frame of reference, or whether it is for somebody who may be listening for the first time. So that way, when I use terminology, you know what I'm talking about, okay? So let me see if I can share my screen here real fast and look at this. And so in defining trauma, what we talk about is that there are terrible events that happen in our life. Those terrible events, like this year has been, again, police brutality, riots, racial tensions. The political scene has been difficult, COVID-19 and all of the efforts to respond to that. Those are terrible events, but it also could be in our own personal lives events. I just had a sister-in-law who passed that we did the funeral for just a couple of days ago, just a few days ago. You could have lost a parent, could have lost several people. I had a friend of mine who is struggling with some stuff right now that I can count, that I know of, about 8 people in his life, including a mentor, a brother, a sister, a mentee that died. Then he got COVID. His wife got COVID. All of those things happened since like March. Those are terrible events that create trauma that have nothing to do with what's happening within the country. So those are terrible events. So with those terrible events, we usually have an emotional response to those events, and we call that emotional response to those terrible events trauma. And the question is not whether or not we have trauma, but how we respond to those emotions. And so there could be an unhealthy response, could be that we ignore those emotions. And I think, Cam, you just talked about that, how very often as men, we ignore our emotions. We don't deal with it. We try to hide it. We hide it under, machismo, or we hide it under athletics or drugs or alcohol or whatever. Just simply say, I don't have any feelings. I'm not feeling anything. And then the result of that is traumatization, because now those things, those terrible events, and because we have not dealt with them well, they become our identity. And that's the traumatization, when those emotions control us rather than us controlling the emotions, and they define us. Then that makes us much more susceptible to when another terrible event happens, because we have not developed the coping mechanisms, or better yet, the healing mechanisms, to be able to put us in the right position. We get re-traumatized again. So that's an unhealthy response. A healthy response to that trauma would be, that's the other option, is to have a healthy response. A more healthy response would be to confront that trauma, to confront the issue and to actually deal with it. To say, yes, I'm scared. Yes, I'm lonely. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm depressed. And then this is what I'm going to do about it. When we do that, that's what results in healing. And now we begin to heal from those things rather than hide from those things. That's what we get a significant breakthroughs. Then that's when we build resilience. When we build this ability to not, when something bad happens again, we've developed some antibodies, as it were. We've developed not an immunity to it, that we'll never have emotions again, but we will have the ability to better deal with it. And so that is just as we look at that, that's kind of the framework that I wanted to at least start to talk about. And so let's maybe just, without getting into your own personal trauma, in general, you have any thought, either one of you, Cam or Suzanne, you have any general thoughts about this little rubric that I've created in terms of trauma? Either one of you. I'll start with you, Suzanne, because you all are both going to be polite now. Well, ladies first. Oh, okay. So
okay, that's what it is.
You have any thoughts about that in general, not without getting into your specific stuff?
Yeah. I mean, even coming from working in the mental health field, I think this is very much in line with what we teach kids, right? We use the ARC model, we use ACEs, all that stuff. So I think it's in line with what we teach kids. But I think a key part that you hit on is that trauma, we can't control a traumatic event happening, right? A terrible event happening, we oftentimes cannot control. But then, we always look at what things can we control and what things can't we control. Outside of our circle of control is a traumatic, terrible experience happening. But then inside is what we do with it, right? Our response, we're going to maybe have a immediate emotional response and we can't control that, but then what we do with those emotions is important. And so I think when I look at this too, I'm looking at, when you're making choices and being able to control those little pieces, then, it's going to determine which pathway you go down, whether unhealthy or healthy or healing or more traumatized, as you call it. So I think you hit on some good stuff, JP.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Cross, any general thoughts?
No, I'm agreeing. Like, I think, yeah, you definitely hit it right on the head. Like, honestly, me personally, I know I've walked both of these paths, especially in teenage years. I definitely walked both of these. So I mean, more or less the ignore part until I met you, truth be told. But yeah, it's tough to talk about and it's tough to express. So you taking time out to put this together to actually help people, this is really, really, really good, actually. So right, the biggest that I was was the healing. And I think that one section is probably the longest, because healing is a time thing, but it's different for each person. With certain situations, some things I consider myself healed, like when it's past me and it's done and I've let it go and it's over. So for some things, they go right off and I'm like, okay, I'm good. But some things, even to this day, still kind of need some healing. And so I think that of it is really, really big, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But yeah, I definitely think overall though, you did a great job putting this. But yeah.
Okay, so let's do this.
Wait, JP, before you move on, I have a question. Have you ever gotten pushback from people? Because sometimes, like when you're saying this, people, I don't know if people give you pushback in that there's maybe resistance to the idea that you actually can control certain aspects of traumatization. So I'm curious if you've ever gotten pushback. I think I pushed back at first. You don't gotta use me, but
it's funny that you asked that question, because I think you were the only one who pushed back. So
I think I was pushing back about terminology, but yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I've ever had anybody really. I probably have, but in this setting, I wrote this class, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, maybe something like that.
Right.
And so I've taught it to our staff at church, and now I'm taking the church through it, or taking our spiritual formation. I don't know if I've gotten back any pushback yet. I remember when me and you were talking about it when I was putting this together.
Yeah.
And do you remember, you did push back, but I think it might have been more about terminology.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit deeper than that. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Man, I know I was the only one. So I was pushing back on the traumatization being a choice. Because you were saying it's a choice to interpret things as traumatization, and I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. And I remember how you termed it. You termed it in a way that made sense, but I think on surface value, I was like, I don't think that fits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So I'm remembering now us sitting in my office drawing this out. I remember when I created this chart.
Yep.
And drawing this out. And so I believe your pushback was you were automatically traumatized. I think I was making a distinction between trauma and traumatization.
That's exactly what it was.
Right. And you were saying that no, when it happens, we all experience trauma and we're all traumatized. And I think that is when I was able, in explaining it to you initially, was when it brought clarity to me to see that no, just because you have an emotional response to something does not mean that thing defines you.
Right.
What describes you doesn't have to define you. Right? And so when it becomes defining of you, and so I think biblically, if I'm going to bring the scripture into it, give an example: the man at the pool of Bethesda, right? And Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be made whole?" He had a terrible event. He was sick and had been sick for 38 years. His emotional response, he had an emotional response to that. He felt really bad for himself. He felt really sorry for himself. And you saw that. So that when Jesus says, "Do you want to be made whole?" A healthy response would have been, "Yes, I want to be made whole." But instead, his response was, "I don't have anybody to help me. Every time I try, I fail. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen, and I can't do anything." In other words, that thing had become, he had lost hope of being healed. And as a result of that, his identity was that brokenness, right? And so, but on the other hand, when Jesus said, "Do you want to be made whole?" If he had said, "Of course I want to be made whole what do I need to do? That would have been a more healthy response to that.
Yeah.
And but he almost missed the healing. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is important that we understand that just because something happens to you and there's an emotion, does that mean that that emotion defines you in totally? Because you are depressed today doesn't mean that you are suffering from depression. Because you're sad doesn't mean that you're depressed. Because you're angry doesn't mean that you have anger issues. You know, those type of things, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think you hit on it. So I think you defined traumatization when we were in your office is the haunting of trauma. I think it was something around there. And I did realize what you were saying, and that so when we internalize emotion and make it part of our identity, then that's unhealthy. So when people are like, oh, I feel anxious versus I am a worrier. That's just what I do. That's who I am. So that's the distinction we were making with traumatization. Now I remember. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and I'll just say one other thing, and then Cam has been shaking his head, so I want to let him jump in here.
I'm listening.
Oh, you on camera now, and
leave the man's alone.
you on camera. You stuck, bro. Sorry. But one of the things I talked about is that traumatization or that trauma is that defining trauma is traumatization. And that is haunting pain. It is pain that you can't let go. The pain that you won't let, it just comes back time and time and time again. Every time you get into that situation, you just simply can't let it go. Right? So, yeah, Cam, anything you want to say? I'm not trying to force you in, but anything you want to say about that? Because you were shaking your head in agreement. So, is there something you want to say about that?
First, I was with there is a different definition to everything, and I think you hit it on the head. Like you said, it was an example. You said like just because someone's anxious doesn't mean that they're like have anxiety problems per se, or it's like because someone is sad doesn't mean they're automatically always depressed. Because emotions flare and they change depending on time, space, situation, anything. So it's not too good to put like such a heavy title on not maybe a heavy problem, but when a problem does approach and it is there, then you need to be able to put a title on it. I know for a long time I wasn't able to put a title on my own like depression. I knew it was there and knew I was going through it, and I just kind of pile on in front of people and walked through the hallways and kept it pushing. But it was still I really like sat down with myself like something not right, like you're not yourself. And it took a while, but sometimes when it gets really, really bad, you do need to put a title on things. But if it's not necessarily needing a title, you don't want to rush to a title because you kind of want to, like in my mind, I kind of want to see if I can get through it, or like what's tomorrow going to look like, what's next week going to look like. But if it's consistent, then you got to put a title on it. So that's why I was kind of I was comparing it to myself in my own situation. So
So both of you talked about putting a title on it, and that's interesting because that's really a really good segue to a significant portion of what we talked about in the early part of this class was the necessity of labeling your losses. Being able to label the losses and to say, this is a loss. This is something that I've lost. This is a pain. This is a traumatic event. To do that, to be able to label that loss and then to lament that loss. So let's talk about labeling it for a second. Cam, you said that it was challenging for you to label it, to put a title on it. Why?
Me personally, like if people know me, I'm known for being really goofy and really happy. So to take that like aspect of who I'm supposed to be and what people are going to expect out of me, and for it to be the complete opposite, it was hard to bring to people because I didn't know how people were going to accept it, if people were going to accept it, if people were going to take it serious. you know, it was really about like how I was going to be viewed. And that's why it was hard for me to put a title on it, because I've seen people with depression and I've had a lot of friends with it and they talk to me about it. Like usually I'm the person that people come talk to. So it's kind of like a doctor being sick. If that, you know what I'm saying? Like it was like a doctor being sick. So I'm like, I can't be sick. I'm the doctor. Like, you know, so it was hard for me to accept. After a while, I was just like, something isn't right. Like you're not yourself, and it's not gonna get fixed with you ignoring it. And I was ignoring it. I was kind of putting it off, and I was telling myself, it'll get better. And I just kind of went through the motions. And with going through the motions, I realized there's no healing in that because I wasn't confronting it. So I think that's why it was hard, because to answer your original question, it was hard because I didn't want to let others down in the process. And yeah, I guess I had to finally just take time out for myself and just focus on myself. But I didn't want to take that time out because I felt if I did, I would let other people down in the process. So that's why it was really hard for me personally.
Okay, so I think I heard three things in terms of why it was difficult for you to label those losses. You didn't have the words. It was the absence of a vocabulary to be able to properly define what you were feeling and what you were dealing with. Second, there was second thing was fear. There's a fear of rejection, wondering about what other people are going to say about me. But then there's also this sound. I also heard a fear of loss in terms of image.
Yep.
You know, this I am the doctor. I'm not supposed to get a cold. I'm happy. I'm not supposed to be sad. So it was this image. That was the fear. Is that accurate? Those things addressed it? Suzanne, what about you? As you think about your own response to loss and to that, do you identify with those three things? And are there others that you would add to that made it difficult for you to label your losses?
That's a good question, because I was trying to think about the traumatic situations I've been in. In high school, I totally agree with Cam in that I don't think I had the terminology with some of the things that happened to me in high school to be able to label them as trauma. I knew they were big, but I didn't think of them as trauma. And then my reaction was just ignore or push down, you know, pretend it wasn't trauma. Trying to think, I don't know if I have anything to add to that. Honestly, I think those are pretty on point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So let me also go back and let's talk about the second part of that is labeling your loss.
Yeah.
And also lamenting. So can you lament your loss if you never label it? I don't think you can.
Definition. What is lament? Sorry, college.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So lament is I just feel bad about it. I'm saying I lost and I feel really bad about it. I'll give you an example. Earlier, right around the time, right before I began to write this course, I woke up one Saturday morning. It was toward the middle of the year. And I woke up one Saturday morning, and when I woke up, like all of the losses that I had this year, downloaded into my spirit. It was just kind of overwhelming. It was like, wow, I lost this. And I lost a lot of money in my business because I couldn't fulfill contract. My wife could not go to her graduation after 4 years of 3 years of hard work. She couldn't do her graduation. And I had a trip to Africa canceled. I had a trip to California canceled. I had teaching trips to Florida canceled. And I didn't get to do all of those things. We had a cruise canceled. And all of a sudden, all of those things downloaded. And I realized I never really said, man, this sucks. I was just pushing through it, you know? I was just dealing with it and helping other people, but I had never really said, God, you know what? I don't like this. I'm mad about it, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so that's lamenting. It's that expression.
Mhm.
So if I were to be clinical about it, the lamenting would be the expression of sadness or disappointment over the loss, or the expression of the emotions that come about when you identify those losses.
Mhm.
So
I just looked up in the dictionary you were on.
okay.
Yeah, express grief or sorrow for something.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's lamenting, Cam. So
All right.
if you don't label it, can you lament it?
I don't think so. If so, it's really hard to. I don't think so.
So then that leads to the next question. If you hadn't labeled it, what was your response to that? What did that do to you when you neither label, for both of you, when you could not label it and you could not lament it? What is the impact that it's had upon you? You think of the impact. How was it expressed in your life?
So I think to answer your question, I don't think you can lament without labeling the loss, because, lamenting being an expression of grief or sorrow, if you're not labeled for something, so you have to be able to label that something. Otherwise, you're just you're sitting in feelings without understanding why you have that feeling, right? And so I think for my own self, sitting in that feeling, I either mislabeled it, ignored it, reassigned it to something else, or thought it was there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That last one hit. I definitely, don't
Like
know it. Yeah, if you don't know exactly what it is, you start looking in the mirror like, what is your problem? And if you can't tell yourself what that problem is, that's when you start saying to yourself like, okay, it's just me.
Yeah.
For me, I tried to ignore it for a while and told myself it'll pass. I do a lot of stuff like that though. Like, and it's not necessarily healthy. Some stuff I feel like does just pass the time. Like but that just or the so if I choose to let it pass, I let it pass and it goes away maybe for a little bit, but then it'll keep readdressing. So like if it keeps readdressing, then I start looking at myself like, okay, what's going on? So I definitely have hit myself with self-blame on multiple occasions on stuff like that. So, yeah.
What's your famous phrase, Jason? What's wrong with you versus what happened to you?
Yeah. Those two questions are
Yeah.
at the heart of trauma-informed responses. Trauma-informed healing and responses. Because a lot of times when things happen, our first response is self-critical. It's self-criticizing. What's wrong with you? The first response to other people tends to be, what's wrong with you? It's critical, and it's like, you're not supposed to behave this way. You shouldn't think this way. Something is wrong with you. And then you begin to label yourself as broken. And to label yourself as broken. And if I'm broken, then what value do I have?
Broken without redemption, because I think we're still broken as human beings, but broken without redemption.
Broken without redemption, yeah. And broken without hope of redemption.
Yep.
I'm just toe up from the flow up. I mean, it's just done. I was like, I can't, and so stop and think about that for people who have not experienced healing from trauma. And they think that they've told themselves they're broken. Well, how does that impact relationships? Because if you go into a relationship,
don't even start.
I am. If I hit something.
You hit nerves over there. You is hit straight nerves, man.
Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop, Flex. I'll finish the thought. I'm gonna finish the thought and allow you to get yourself together so you can share it. Okay, but I think So by the way, you all, those of you who are listening to this very professional conversation, this is the way we talk all the time. This is really, you literally are sitting in the room. This is the way we flow all the time. So
Yeah.
we just put a camera on us. We're not perpetrating. This is the way we roll all the time, right? And that's what's good about it. So we're not even going to try to make it look like it's some kind of professional deal. This is the way we heal. This is the way we talk. So
that's what mentorship and discipleship look like in reality. It's not, step 1, 2, 3. That's what it looks like.
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Thank you for saying that, Suzanne. This is what mentorship and discipleship looks like. I'm really glad you said that, because I want to just pause there for a second, because this is critical. So many people have this idea that mentorship looks like you said, a scorecard. No, it's not. It's just life. And you hit something and boom, we go with that. And we go in it. And sometimes we figuring it out together and we don't know. And we go from that. So yeah, I'm really glad that you said that, Suzanne. So that's important. Okay. So let me just finish that thought, and then Kim, I'm going to come back to you. Because you have not labeled and lamented your brokenness, or lamented your pain, or your emotions, or your losses, I should say, you begin to say, I'm broken. Now you bring that brokenness into a relationship. And how do people respond to that? How do you respond to people in that? When you say, man, I'm not worthy of being loved. I'm not worthy of being forgiven. Or you don't have the proper, when you see brokenness in other people, how do you respond to their brokenness? Do you say, what's wrong with you? Or do you have the capacity to be able to say, what happened to you? Tell me about it. Tell me about it. Or do you just say, listen, I don't want to hear that stuff. And like the Wiz, don't nobody bring me no bad news. I don't want no bad news, because, and I don't even know if I want to be with you, because you all messed up too. Or you just wallow in your messed upness together, and so you just, so Cam, let me just stop. I think Cam about to get his shout on.
No,
hello. Okay.
I'm really reminiscing right now. That's what I'm doing. But to be completely honest, I have played both of those roles to the key. There was time where I considered myself, I will say broken, yeah, because I didn't even know who I really, really was. So I would consider myself broken, or consider myself unlovable, like a person that really just couldn't, be accepted. And so it was, for me, I didn't want to go into relationships. I didn't, and that's in all aspects, dating, friendships, all that. I didn't want to be around people for a while. Lucky, I have very irritating friends who don't care about that. And they were like, nah, bro, like, you need to be around. And like, they kind of just put up with me. And so with them putting up with me and with them slowly helping me, I got to a point where I could say, I am worth it. I just have to put myself back together. And so it went from me being broken to, I started to say, I'm damaged. Because I believe you can be damaged and still move forward. Because if you're damaged, you know something's going on, but I think you finally realize something's going on. And realizing is the first step to healing, because then you can start addressing it slowly. Now, as far as the other side of being the person that's trying to convince somebody that they deserve to be loved and that they are, like, they consider themselves broken and they come to you with it, it is very challenging. It is very challenging, because at one point you're just like, man, I gotta help them. And then another one, you're just like, I don't know how much help I can give, because you can only really help people when they want to get help. and they want to. Because for me, when I helped, it was tough at first, but over time, I'm like, okay, I got people here. They're investing time in me. Let me try. So then I started to want the help. But it's a whole different playground when you got to help somebody, or you feel that you need to help someone and they don't want the help, or they don't put the effort in, they don't show it, because then you question yourself and you question them, and it gets really, really hard. I've had to help a lot of friends, just like, hey man, or like, I get it, it's tough, I've been here, and that's why I'm here with you, because I've been in this situation, I've been in your shoes, I know how bad life can get, but you can't. That's a big part of it. Not letting your past and letting all the bad things that happen to you dictate your future and dictate how you move forward. And you have a choice. You have a choice of getting up and continuing to fight. So I've played both parts of that spectrum, and it's tough. It's tough either way. So yeah, that's a big one. Tough either way though.
You know what I hear when I hear both of you guys talk about that? You know, with a little rhyming, but I think when we function out of our dysfunction, then we have skewed views of God, self, and others. And then we're operating off of that.
Okay, hold on a second. You know me, I'm writing that down.
Copyright on that.
Huh?
It's a copyright.
No, it's too late. It's out there in the atmosphere now. I think the Lord told me that.
Right.
You said when you function out of our dysfunction, we have a skewed view.
When you function out of your dysfunction, you have skewed views of God, self, and others.
Yeah, that's good. That is true. It's very true. It's like looking into one of those fun house mirrors that distort your image. You don't, it makes you really fat, really skinny, whatever, your head is too big, whatever. That's what it's like when you have the wrong, and you're looking through the wrong end of the microscope, when you're looking through that type of a deal. So
yeah,
there's so much stuff here, man. My brain is really just kind of exploding because there's so many things you all are saying that I just want to jump on. And so I'm trying to take notes and I can come back to them. But Suzanne, do you want to say something about the relationship aspect? When you go into a relationship, how does it impact relationships when you go into, when you have not healed yourself from traumatization?
Yeah, I think, you're at risk for re-traumatization, but also, again, you're functioning out of that dysfunction. So it's really hard to build healthy relationships when you're in dysfunction, both with God, self, and others. So you bring that into the relationship and it plays out. Those unhealthy behaviors, those unhealthy thought patterns, they play out. And then on top of that, the other person's not healthy either. I mean, it's turbulent.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get great grounding when, what we always talk about identity, but identity being, if you have a faulty foundation, it's going to crumble and fall.
Right.
But if your foundation is built on the right thing, then it can support the weight of whatever is in store. Yeah. And so, ultimately, if your foundation is faulty, and in the case of trauma is not addressed and healed from, then that's going to crumble at some point. There's going to be little cracks that start, and then eventually, whether it's another event or, and the levee breaks, or it's over time, eventually that's going to be a big seep hole.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Sorry about that. So get sound now. So what I was saying was thank you for watching today. Thank you for being a part of the class today. I come back next week. We're going to conclude this conversation with Kim and Suzanne as we talk about their own personal journeys with trauma, and also the steps that they took to begin to experience healing. Hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, okay, I know I'm off mute now. Hope you enjoyed this. Put your comments, excuse me, any thoughts. Also, just want to say, yeah, I know that you could only see the screen, not our faces. That was a mistake on my part as I was recording. So just think of it like you were listening to a podcast, okay? Next week, you will be able to see our faces, and it'll look a little bit more like you normally would. But I just needed to take a little bit of a break this week and not do the live recording, but I did it anyway, didn't I? Okay. God bless you. Lord, I pray for each person that is watching today. I pray, Lord God, that their spirits have been encouraged, that they have been uplifted, that they have been strengthened by your power to do that which you have called them to do. Bless them this day and bless them this week to be a blessing. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you. I will see you next week.